Okay, so welcome everybody. Hello. Thank you for being here on this Sunday afternoon. It's fantastic to see so many faces and people that I know and some people that I don't know who have come through friends. So that's really, really brilliant. So I know a lot of you, and there's some people who I don't know. So I will just do a quick 30 seconds about who I am. So my name's Lucy Kelly, and I'm a nutritional therapist. So my job is to coach people through nutritional changes, and that might be for general health or for a specific health condition, or to support somebody through a sports program for sports performance. So I'm a specialist in child and teenager nutrition, and I absolutely love working with sporty people. I trained at the Institute for Optimum Nutrition, but my background is in biochemistry. But I think more importantly, I have 3 sporty children, 2 of whom are teenagers, and 1 who's about to be a teenager. So as a parent, I really get what it's like providing food for the family, picnics, and when you're trying to get everybody from A to B to sporting things, how that can be quite complicated. Now, it's unlikely we'll have time at the end to have questions, but if people do have questions, I'd really like it if you could email me to the lucy@lucykellynutrition.co.uk email address, and I will answer your email. It might take a couple of days to get back to you, but I do reply to my emails, so please do email me with any questions. So my aims for today, the reason that I'm doing this webinar, and it's the second webinar that I've done, and I will be doing more on nutrition for children and teens on different topics, but there's a lot of nutritional information out there, and it can be really confusing. So I'm on a bit of a mission to help parents feed their children the best way they can, and to educate teenagers in a way that's kind of uncomplicated and unstressful. Because with a little bit of knowledge, nutrition can be quite simple. And I feel very strongly about that. But my aim for you today is I want you to go away understanding a couple of basic concepts, and therefore you can go away and choose the best foods and drinks for you to support your sport. Now, you're very welcome to take notes, but I will email out a summary afterwards, so you can kind of sit back and listen, and you'll get the information you need afterwards. So basically what we'll cover is hydration. Hi there, Helen. If you could just switch your video off, because I'm recording this session. Thank you. Lovely to see your face, but I need the video off. So basically what we'll cover, I'll talk about hydration, the best foods for energy, and I will weave in specific foods and drinks to that. So hydration, what is hydration? Hi there, Fiona. If you could just switch your video off, Fiona, because I'm recording this session. Thanks. Thanks, Fiona. If you could just switch your video off, that'd be great. Thanks. So just going on to hydration, this is the first of the concepts that I want people to understand. So hydration is making sure you've got enough fluid in your body, making sure you're drinking enough water. And it is the most important thing. And why is that? Because every cell in the body needs water. Needs water to detoxify, it needs water to make energy, our digestive system needs water to digest and absorb food, we need water to maintain our body temperature, and for many more things. We also need water for our muscles. If we're not hydrated enough, our muscles do not work properly. So if you are in your rowing boat, where you're very much relying on the strength of your leg muscles, your arm muscles, your core muscles, if your muscles aren't properly hydrated, those muscles will not be as strong and as powerful as they could be. Now, the other reason that hydration is important is that because the brain needs adequate hydration to work properly for our concentration. Now, for every sport, we need to be able to think, but there are some sports that are a bit more strategic. I'm thinking about sailing here, where you're having to think about the weather, the wind, and the tides, and all that kind of thing. And if you're not hydrated properly, you can't concentrate properly. So hopefully you can see that hydration is important for the physical, the muscles, but also for the mental, for the brain and the concentration. Now, how much should we be drinking? This is a very difficult question to answer in this context because it's very individual. It depends on your size. It depends on the sport you're doing, how long you do that sport for, and how intensive that sport is. It also depends on the weather. We've got some people tuning in from Dubai, I think, and that's a very different situation where it's very, very hot there. Sailing in Dubai is very different from someone who's sailing in England, with how much water you're going to be losing through sweating. But the thing is to kind of gauge your own body. Start thinking about how your body feels after sport. Do you feel that you're a bit dehydrated? So, for example, if you come off the cricket pitch, you've been on the cricket pitch all day long, see how you feel after that. Now, symptoms of dehydration, how do we know if we're dehydrated? Okay, so we feel thirsty. But the advice is to not wait until you feel thirsty to drink, is to actually drink beforehand to preempt that. Other symptoms of dehydration: dry mouth, cracked lips. People can get headaches, lacking concentration. And also another sign of dehydration is if your urine, is if your wee is very dark yellow colour. And in fact, that's a very good gauge of hydration. If when you go to the loo, your wee is nice and yellow and pale, then that's a sign that you're nicely hydrated. But start kind of feeling about how you feel after sport. And if you feel that it wasn't enough, if you go to the loo after sport and your wee is very dark, then think, I need to take an extra water bottle with me. I need to kind of manage that. So the advice is to have a schedule and make it part of your routine when you're preparing for sports. So start well hydrated, 2 to 3 hours before your sporting activity, have a really good drink. And then about 20 minutes before, have another drink, say another glass of water. Now, the latest research is saying for children that during an activity, you should be drinking every 10 to 20 minutes. Now, I think that that's quite hard to achieve with a lot of sports, to be drinking that much during. So my take on this is to drink when you can. If you're playing rugby or football or hockey and you have a half time, you can drink then. If you are doing something like a sailing event where you're on the water all day, I suggest to my sailors that they drink between every race, and maybe if it's very hot, on every downwind leg. Other sports will be different. Skiing is a bit more tricky because you've got to carry water. So really think about that when you're planning your sport, how you can make sure you've got enough water. The other key is to drink after, and particularly if you're doing a multiple day event, like a tournament over a few days, make sure you hydrate afterwards so that the next day you're nicely hydrated. Now, what to drink? So water is the best, but there are 2 specific situations where a sports drink might be useful. So number 1, this is if it's very hot and you're sweating a lot. So you're in a hot country. Down here in the south of France, it gets very hot with things like rugby matches, football, handball. So you really have to keep on top of it. The second scenario where a sports drink might be useful is if you are using a drink to top up your energy rather than food. So, for example, if you do a sport where you're doing something for a very long time, cycling, long distance running, where it's hard to take in solid food, other sports where you might not want solid food sitting in your stomach, like swimming, you can use a sports drink to top up your energy, where digesting food might not be so practical. Now, sports drinks, what kind of sports drink? There's no need to go out and buy specific sports drinks. I make our own, and what you need is some fruit juice. Personally, I like apple juice, and you get some water, and you do half water, half fruit juice, and a pinch of salt. And that makes a really nice sports drink, very easy to make. and there's no sort of added additives in there. Experiment with the kind of juice you like. Grape juice is quite nice, or tropical juice. Just citrus juice can be a bit acid, so lots of people find that that's not so good. So experiment with that a little bit. Right, moving on then to food for energy. Now, the body uses a specific sugar called glucose to make energy. I've kept this very simple for the purposes for today, but we use glucose to make energy. And we get this glucose from the blood, and we also store it in our muscles. And there's two things that are important. We want our blood glucose levels to be nice and stable, and we want our muscles to be nice and full of something called glycogen, which is basically how the body stores glucose. So which foods contain glucose? Okay, so we've got sugary foods, things like biscuits, cakes, and sweets, sugary cereals. Also, fruit and dried fruit contains glucose. Foods like pasta, rice, potatoes, and bread. So they don't taste very sweet because the glucose units are kind of joined together like a necklace in the food, and the body sort of chops those up and digests it down to release the glucose from that. So you're probably thinking, well, surely to get lots of energy, we just need to eat lots of foods that contain glucose, lots of sugary foods. But no, this is not the best thing to do, and I will explain why. So when we eat, you can see this little graph here, and hopefully you can see my arrow. When we eat a lot of foods with lots of glucose, the levels of glucose rise in the blood very quickly. And you get this sharp glucose spike. Now, the problem with this is that this is not a good situation for the body. It's too much glucose in the blood. So the body produces this hormone called insulin, and the role of insulin is it drags glucose out of the blood and stores it into the cells. But when we have a glucose spike like this, too much glucose going in all at once, the body slightly panics, produces a lot of insulin, and so a lot of glucose is dragged out of the blood, and we end up with low blood glucose, or we call it a glucose crash. So even though we've eaten a lot of glucose, a lot of sugary food, we end up with low blood glucose. Now, this is important because the symptoms of low blood glucose are low energy, we feel tired, we lose concentration because our brains need a very stable source of glucose, we can't think properly, some people get headaches, some people get a bit kind of aggravated and angry, and some people, it can affect your mood, it can make you feel a bit down in the dumps. And the other thing is it makes you crave sugary foods because your blood glucose is low. And so what do? We grab a sugary bar and the whole thing goes up again. And you get this blood glucose. You see the red line here where the glucose levels are going up and down, up and down. And you can see that this happens about 2 hours after a meal high in glucose. You can see if you're going to do sport, you have a sort of very sugary meal 2 hours before. If you go into your sport with low blood glucose, you're going to feel tired. You're not going to be able to concentrate so well. And that is not a good situation. And you get to the point where you're kind of relying on sugary snacks to keep you going through the day because you're on this kind of roller coaster. Now, the good news is that actually it's very easy to correct this by eating the right foods. Hello there, Julie.
Hello.
Hi, could you just switch your video off because I'm recording? Thank you. So the good news is that you can correct this very easily by eating the right meals and using a couple of rules. So that's the roller coaster here. So the rules that I use are, and I'm going to use breakfast as an example about how you can really get the meals right. So the rules are swap white for brown and add protein into your meal. So for example, in the morning for breakfast, if you have white toast and lots of jam, you can swap the toast for brown toast. You can have a little bit less jam, and you can add in some nut butter, like some peanut butter. And just those simple swaps can help stabilize the blood glucose levels, giving you a better energy. I'll give another example. Let's say you have porridge made with water and lots of honey. You make the porridge with full fat milk, add in some seeds and have a little bit of honey. And that will be enough to make a difference. Say, for example, you have a sort of sugary breakfast cereal with milk and a glass of orange juice. That is actually, hello there, Victoria.
Hello.
Hi, could you just switch your video on? I'm recording the session. If you could just switch your video, thank you very much.
Sorry, I thought I was on mute.
Don't worry, that's fine. So another example, if you have sort of, say, a sugary cereal with milk and orange juice for breakfast, that's actually a very high sugar breakfast. But you could half and half have cereal with some muesli, some Greek yogurt, which would add in some protein, and a whole orange. And again, just those changes could help balance the blood glucose levels. An ideal one is eggs. So eggs and toast with a piece of fruit is a great breakfast. And people are always a bit scathing about the English breakfast here in France, but actually a healthy version of an English breakfast, if you like that in the morning, can give you great energy for the day. Right, during sports. So for activities sort of shorter than an hour, it's not necessary to be eating during the activity, especially if you've had a really good meal that we've talked about 2 hours before. So during sport, you don't need to worry quite so much about the sugar in the snacks, because during the activity, you are going to use up that glucose more quickly than it will be able to give a peak and a crash. And people have asked me about snacks that their children can have during an activity. So things like, I get really sort of upset when sometimes the coaches give the children Haribos and really sort of sugary things to eat, because with those kind of foods, all you're providing is the glucose and a load of chemicals. And to me, you're wasting a huge opportunity. So having some foods in there that provide some other nutrients is fantastic. So something, for example, fruit, bananas and apples are great. I particularly like these compots. I don't like the packaging. I have looked into making my own compots and buying the reusable packets, but it was just a step too far for me. But we have a rule, we use these just for competitions. They're very handy. I love dried fruit, so something like dates. Dates are a great source of glucose, but they've also got fiber and iron in them. Iron is important for sports. So muesli bars and flapjacks. I sometimes make my own flapjacks, but the reality is that I don't have time. I like these Frusley, Jordan's Frusley bars. They're pretty good. I also use these naked fruit and nut bars. You've got a bit of extra nutrition there with the nuts and the dried fruits. I like malt loaf, that sort of Soreen malt loaf that you can get in England is really tasty with the raisins in it. And also dark chocolate or dark chocolate with added nuts. So hopefully that's given you some good ideas for some snacks. And obviously don't forget to hydrate. Now, after sport, the important thing here is to include some carbohydrates to replenish those stores, to replenish the stores in the muscle, and also some protein for repair. So protein will repair muscles. And again, so parents, when children come in from their sports and they're really hungry, like take the opportunity to get some really good things into them, because often they do go straight for the sweet things because they're hungry and they've got low blood sugar level, but kind of maximize, get some good stuff into them before that. I love sandwiches here. So anything, protein sandwiches, eggs, tuna, cheese, hummus sandwiches. I love the combination of fruit and nuts, or sometimes we do fruit and cheese. I like these little Baby Bell cheeses that come in the red wax because they're quite easy to transport. If I've got round to making a nice cake, I'll shove in loads of seeds and nuts to that. And obviously, don't forget to hydrate. So, summary. Basically, number one, make sure you're properly hydrated. Water is fine, and think about your hydration schedule and plan it in. Think about where you can put water bottles. Think about how you can make that work for your sport, whether you're on the water or on a pitch, or whether you're inside, and make sure you have some water for afterwards. and think about the conditions, think about how hot it is, think about whether you want to use like a homemade sports drink to help with hydration. And then we've talked about foods. So foods for stable energy, really thinking about balancing that blood glucose. And I can really help you on a one-to-one basis here, get this absolutely right for you and make it very personalized. Foods during the activity, if it's a long activity, if it's a very intensive activity, don't need to worry quite so much about the sugar content, but don't waste an opportunity. Get the good stuff in as well. And obviously it needs to be practical for the sport that you're doing, transporting it. You know, it's not often practical to take whole fruits out on the water, but you can use compote. So really think about how you can make that work. And then foods to eat afterwards. Again, take the chance to get some good nutrition in. Make sure there's a little bit of protein there for helping with muscles healing and repair, particularly if it's a very intensive sport like rowing or long distance cycling. The protein afterwards is important. And if anybody does have any questions, please do email me. The other thing is that anyone watching or anybody watching this video, I would love you if you would like to book in for a free call with me, a 20-minute call. We can talk about your nutrition. I can explain how I can help you. And I'll put the link to my online calendar on the email when I send out the summary of this talk. So please do contact me if you've got any questions. And thank you very much for taking the time to be here. I will stop recording now, and then hopefully we can have a little talk.